Okay, welcome to our next chapter in My Side of the Mountain. Today we're going to be reading chapter 6, which is called In Which I Meet One of My Own Kind and Have a Terrible Time Getting Away. So if I had to think about what does that mean, one of my own kind, I'd probably make a prediction that that's going to be a human, another human. So he's going to meet up with another person, and then I have a terrible time getting away. So I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe this person's not going to want to leave, or so let's find out about that. Okay, I'm going to just hide that down there so we can start reading. 5 notches into June. My house was done. I could stand in it, lie down in it, and there was room left over for a stump to sit on. On warm evenings, I would lie on my stomach and look out the door, listen to the frogs and nighthawks, and hope it would storm so that I could crawl into my tree and be dry. I had gotten soaked during a couple of May downpours, and now that my house was done, I wanted the chance to sit in my hemlock and watch a cloudburst wet everything. So his tree is done, so we're finding out 5 notches into June. Remember, he's keeping track on a calendar, so that means 5 days into June. He finished his house. Now, I don't remember exactly what month, if I had to go back and look and see when he got there, but we know it's already June, and he's finished his tree house. Oh, did I skip too many pages here? Oh, the cloudburst wet everything but me. This opportunity didn't come for a long time. It was dry. One morning, I was at the edge of the meadow. I had cut down a small ash tree and was chopping it into lengths of about 18 inches each. This was the beginning of my bed that I was planning to work on after supper every night. With the golden summer upon me, food was much easier to get. I had actually had several hours of free time after supper in which to do other things. I had been eating frogs' legs, turtles, and best of all, an occasional rabbit. My snares and traps were set now. Furthermore, I had a good supply of cattail roots I had dug in the marsh. So it sounds like he's coming along. He's got food now. He's actually getting some of that free time he talked about that he didn't have very much of before. Uh, if you ever eat cattails, be sure to cook them well. Otherwise, the fibers are tough and they take more chewing to get the starchy food from them than they are worth. However, they taste just like potatoes after you've been eating them a couple weeks. And to my way of thinking, they're extremely good. Well, anyway, that summer morning, when I was gathering material for a bed, I was singing and chopping and playing a game with the raccoon. Raccoon! I had come to know. He had just crawled in a hollow tree and had gone to bed for the day when I came to the meadow. From time to time, I would tap on his tree with my axe. He would hang his sleepy head out, snarl at me, close his eyes, and slide out of sight. The third time I did this, I knew something was happening in the forest, because instead of closing his eyes, he pricked his ears, and his face became drawn and tense. His eyes were focused on something down the mountain. I stood up and looked. I could see nothing. I squatted down and went back to work. The raccoon dove out of sight. Well, if I had to make a prediction here, we know that the title is When I Meet One of My Kind, right? So I'm thinking that maybe this is when that person is kind of going to appear. Let's find out. And here's some pictures of his traps that he had been making, a game snare. So the way he can catch animals, it says this one is set so animals along as animals run away. It's hard to read the writing here. Now, what's got you all excited? I said. So he's talking to the raccoon, I said, and tried once more to see what he had seen. I finished the post for the bed and was looking around for a bigger ash to fell and made slats for the springs when I nearly jumped out of my shoes. Now, what are you doing up here all alone? It was a human voice. I swung around and stood face to face with a little old lady in a pale blue sunbonnet and a loose brown dress. Oh, gosh, I said. Don't scare me like that. Say one word at a time until I get used to a human voice. I must have looked frightened because she chuckled, smoothed down the front of her dress, and whispered, Are you lost? No, ma'am, I stuttered. Then a little fellow like you should not be all alone way up here on this haunted mountain. Haunted, said I. Yes, indeed. There's an old story says there are little men up here who play ninepins right down in the gorge in the twilight. She peered at me. Are you one of them? So she's talking about the mountain being haunted. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, no, 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 I said. I read that story. It's just make believe. I laughed and she puckered her forehead, which means sort of like gathered her forehead together. Well, come on, she said. Make some use of yourself and help me fill this basket with strawberries. I hesitated, which means waited. She meant my strawberry supply. She's going to take his strawberries. Now get on with you. A boy your age should be doing something worthwhile instead of playing mumbly peg with sticks. Come on, young man. She jogged me out of the meadow. Little does she know he's been working a lot, right? We worked quite a while before we said any more. Frankly, I was wondering how to save my precious, precious strawberries, and I may say I picked slowly. So precious is something valuable, and those strawberries are valuable to him because that's his food. Every time I dropped one in her basket, I thought how good it would taste. Where do you live? Where do ye live? I jumped. It is terribly odd to hear a voice after weeks of only listening only to birds and raccoons. And what is more, to hear a voice ask a question like that. I live here, I said. You mean Delhi? Fine. You can walk me home. No, nothing I added did any good. She would not be shaken from her belief that I lived in Delhi, so I let it go. We must have reaped every last strawberry before she stood up, put her arm in mine, and escorted me down the mountain. Again, reap means to gather. I certainly was not escorting her. Her wiry little arms were like crayfish pincers. Oh, there's a simile, right? Her wiry arms were like crayfish pincers. I couldn't have gotten away if I had tried, so I walked and listened. She told me all the local and world news, and it was rather pleasant to hear about the National League and atom bomb test and Mr. Riley's three-legged dog that chased her chickens. In the middle of all this chatter, she said, that's the best strawberry patch in the entire Catskill Range. I come up here every spring. For 40 years, I've come to that meadow for my strawberries. It gets harder every year, but there's no jam can beat the jam from that mountain. I know. I've been around here all my life. Then she went right into the New York Yanks without putting in a period. As I helped her across the stream on big boulders, I heard a cry in the sky. I looked up. Swinging down the valley on long pointed wings was a large bird. I was struck by the ease and swiftness of its flight. Duck, hawk, she said, nest around here every year. My man used to shoot 'em. He said they killed chickens, but I don't believe it. The only thing that kills chickens is Mr. Riley's three-legged dog. I think she said duck hawk, not duck, a hawk. Duck hawk, she said. She tipped and teetered as she crossed the rocks, but kept right on talking and stepping as if she knew no matter what she would get across. We finally reached the road. I wasn't listening to her very much. I was thinking about the duck hawk. This bird, I was sure, was the peregrine falcon, the king's hunting bird. I will get one. I will train it for me, I said to myself. Finally, I got the little lady to her brown house at the edge of town. She turned fiercely upon me, which means strongly. I started back. Where are you going, young man? I stopped. Now I thought she was going to march me into town. Well, that's where I'll go then, and I said to myself, and I turned on my heel, smiled at her, and replied, to the library. So he went, so that was his meetup. And that sort of went back to the title again. He had a terrible time getting away from this little old lady. It wasn't what you expected, was it? Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at our questions for today. I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see the questions. So what was the story the old woman told Stan? Well, what was she telling him about the mountain? And she was telling him that the mountain was haunted, right? There was like the little man, but I'm just going to say the mountain was haunted. And give me 3 characteristics that the old woman had. Well, what kind of woman was she? She was pretty like she was. If you had to describe her, what kind of woman was she? I think she was pretty stubborn. She didn't take no for an answer, right? She was stubborn. She was also. She seemed like she was tough. Like she was climbing up the mountain, and she wasn't gonna. She climbed up there all by herself. And another. I would probably. I'm gonna put didn't take no. Answer. And she was tough. She climbed up the mountain. And if we can think of any 3 characteristics, she was also sort of, when she kept telling Sam, like she was, that he wasn't, she was pushy. I would also say pushy. Like she was telling Sam what to do, right? So those are 3 characteristics. Now, again, there's other things you could say about her too. Those aren't the only answers. Those are just the ones I'm coming up with right now at the top of my head. How did Sam get away from the old woman? So in the end, because she was probably not going to take no for answer, as we saw. What did he tell her? How did he get away from her in the end? He told her he was going, to the library. So that was his escape. He said, "I'm going to the library." Now I wonder if he's going to go to the library. I don't know. Let's find out in the next chapter. So again, that was chapter 6, My Side of the Mountain. I'll see you tomorrow.